Hello, everyone. Pastor John Nays. I'm the pastor of Bridgepoint Church in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I'm coming to you today with lesson number 13 or 14. I'm losing track. I believe it's 13. If I don't count last week's, which was just me on vacation saying, hey, I don't have anything for you this week because I'm on vacation. But this week I want to start again with Revelation, the book of Revelation, or the Revelation of Jesus Christ is actually its accurate title. And so the whole book, we're not going to go through the whole book. In fact, when I started this, I thought, I just want to do chapters 1, 2, and 3. But as I continued reading and continued studying, I thought, I think I'm going to go into chapter 4 and chapter 5 as well. So today we're going to start chapter 4 and just the first 3 verses, because there's so much in here that it'll be hard to get through it very well. So I'll try to cover as much as I can and as quickly as I can without boring you too much. But also, this is Wednesday, the day after the presidential election, and I was thinking as I was studying and reading again today and reviewing some of these things, no matter who you voted for, what's going on in the world, we still don't know who won the presidential election. And some will doubt no matter what the outcome is finally declared. But there's a point in all of this. This is John taken to heaven, and for the first time he sees the throne of God, and there's God on the throne. And if we can learn anything from the book of Revelation, it's written into 3 parts: things which were, or Christ on earth, things which are the church on earth, and things which are yet to come. And that's what we're starting today, things which are yet to come. And the truth that overrides all other things on this earth is God's on the throne. And we can worry and we can stress and we can have a temper tantrum. I don't know how you're reacting. But I hope you're taking a deep breath, asking God to just say, God, give me peace through all of this. I'm trusting you, I'm believing you. You're still on the throne, and I'm not. In fact, God's already there. He doesn't live in time. Time lives within him. And so he's already there. He knows what's happened. He knows what's happening. He knows what's going to happen. It's all the same to him. And we can rest in him and we can trust in him that no matter where we're at or what we've gone through or what we think is right or wrong or indifferent toward, God's still on the throne. And that hopefully will help you sleep a little better and trust the Lord through it all. So, Revelation chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. I'm going to read it for you, and then we'll dive in. After this I looked, and there before me was a door standing open in heaven. And the voice I had heard first speaking to me like a trumpet said, come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this. Now, check this real quick. I looked, and there was an open door standing before me. Welcome. Open door just simply means you're welcome to come in. So welcome door, it's open for him. But notice this, he said, and the voice I first heard speaking like a trumpet said, and this is in reference to chapter 1. When he first saw Christ, when he first heard the voice of Christ calling to him or saying to him, John, write these things down. These are the things which are about to happen on the earth. And so this is Jesus speaking to him again, and he's saying, come on up here. I want to show you something. And he has a voice like a trumpet, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. At once I was in the Spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. And the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and ruby. A rainbow that shone like an emerald encircled the throne. Now, this is a beautiful picture. Something very significant about this, by the way. Notice the reference to color, that John sees a lot of color and describes the beauty of it. And someone sitting on the throne, he doesn't identify who the person sitting on the throne is, probably God the Father. But remember what Jesus said, when you've seen me, you've also seen the Father. But this is probably God the Father, and Jesus calling to him to come on up into the throne room of God. And he sees this beautiful picture, a lot of color and stones that are brilliant and costly. And he says, he says, look at what I'm about to show you. I'm about to show you some marvelous, wonderful, amazing, and really terrifying things. And he shows him all this in the presence of the Father in heaven itself. And it's a great picture of, again, what I said earlier, you got to trust the guy on the throne. What choice do we have as Christians? God is our Father, and he's sitting on the throne, and he's ruling over the heavens and the earth. Then relax. He's on the throne. Now let's move on. Now John is taken to the third heaven. Third heaven simply means it's not the heaven above the earth or our atmosphere, or the heavenlies, which are all of the created bodies of planets and stars and so on. But this is heaven itself, the third place where God dwells and lives and is. And all of creation exists within him. He does not exist within creation because he created it all, so he couldn't exist within creation. It has to exist within him. And that'll mess with your mind for a little bit, but that's how it works. And so John is taken to the third heaven, and he sees the Father, and he sees the Son, sees the Holy Spirit, and he's in the place we're all longing to go. So in chapters 4 and 5 is really the introduction, or the open door, so to speak, of the vision that John has. And again, this is a vision. John didn't get taken to heaven physically. He said, I was in the Spirit. So he's spiritually transported into heaven, and he saw this amazing vision of God the Father seated on the throne. And chapters 4 and 5 are the introduction to that. And it's also significant to note that because this is the introduction, and that this hasn't happened yet, that none of the rest of the prophetic part of Revelation, the tribulation, the great tribulation, hasn't happened yet either. In fact, there are a lot of people out there who believe we're in the middle of the tribulation now, or ended the tribulation and we're starting the great tribulation, or that the second coming of Jesus, which is separate from us going to him, he's coming to us, coming to earth again, that's already happening, or the second coming is about to happen, and Christ is going to set up rule in the New Jerusalem on the earth for 1,000 years, and that's all true. All that's going to happen. But because this hasn't happened yet, the rest of it hasn't happened yet either. Because this is the gateway, the doorway, the opening to the entire revelation, prophetic revelation that John had. You really can't say, okay, some of this has happened even though this didn't happen, which is the beginning. This is the beginning. John is escorted to heaven, taken there, and sees God on the throne. So just kind of a word to the wise. Back off some of your teaching sometime until it all falls into chronological order. The book of Revelation unfolds chronologically. That which was, that which is, and that which is to come. We are just starting the section where that is which is to come, and that's where this starts. John going to heaven to see the Father. So let's move on. So the first voice he hears, of course, is the voice of Christ from chapter 1, like a trumpet. And this is where we get into the rapture of the church. The debate over this is huge. When is the rapture of the church going to happen? Let me give you a little information. Two things. One, the rapture of the church is mentioned twice in the New Testament. So it is going to happen. The other thing is, though, that it hasn't happened yet. And the reason I know that is because we haven't gotten to this door where we've been invited up into heaven yet. So we're still here. And the rest of the book of Revelation hasn't happened yet. So that's the other part. The third part is that the rapture itself is never really mentioned in the book of Revelation. There's no reference to it unless you see the rapture here, which you certainly can. You can come to that conclusion that this is the rapture of the church. It certainly makes sense. But the rapture itself, that word, that verbiage, the catching away of the church, never is mentioned in the book of Revelation. So we have to kind of read into it and say, okay, the rapture is happening. We know that because it is in the New Testament. When is it happening? That's for us to kind of determine, and that's why there's so much discussion and even books and volumes written about this. So if we look at this passage of Scripture and say this is the introduction into Revelation, this is the prophetic part of Revelation, the first thing that happens is John is escorted into heaven, into the presence of God, before the throne of God, where the church will live and dwell. We know that that's true. And this is some proof that that pre-trib mindset is accurate. So the other part is that not only is this John's vision, but in the rest of the book of Revelation, the church isn't mentioned again until after the tribulation and until even after the second coming of Christ. It's mentioned as the bride of Christ, but never as the church. And there are other portions of Revelation that talk about Jews being saved out of the tribulation, Gentiles being saved out of the tribulation. That's an interesting point, because in the New Testament, there's neither Jew nor Greek. The church comes together as a single body, as a whole, and therefore it's not divided. So why would it be divided again in the book of Revelation? And why would Revelation make such a strong point of saying that there are 12,000 Jews saved out of the 12 tribes of Israel, giving us the 144,000 Jews who are saved out of the tribulation? And specifically the Jews, number one, because God's giving the Jews a second chance, even after the crucifixion of Christ and the rejection of Christ as their Messiah. God's giving them another chance to accept that Jesus is the Messiah, and so they're 144,000 saved out of the book of Revelation, or out of the Great Tribulation. So with all that said, I know that's a lot of information, but with all that said, the point is, the church doesn't exist throughout the tribulation. And to me, period, just to me, this is my opinion, there are a lot better teachers than me that will differ with me. But to me, that is the single most important part of why I believe the church will not be around during the tribulation. I just don't see it in the book of Revelation. And so therefore, how could it? I mean, seriously, the church is the church. All of the horrors of tribulation happen because there is no Spirit-led, Spirit-alive church that brings righteousness and truth and the goodness of Christ to this world. And the world is missing all of that. And so humanity in its depravity runs amok. And there's no one to stop it. Not the church, not anyone. And so it's an ugly picture, the tribulation and the Great Tribulation, 3.5 years of each. I think that, to me, that's proof enough. But let's move on. I want to go on to the stones, the throne of God. The Father sitting on the throne, probably the Father, because Christ throughout Revelation is referred to as the Lamb that was slain almost every time. And so we get this vision of someone on the throne, and it doesn't say who it is. In fact, it's really interesting that John says there's someone sitting on the throne, but doesn't describe him in any human context, just with these beautiful colors. And I think it's just, John is so overwhelmed by the glory that he sees, that this is the glory of God, and he's in the presence of the glory of God, and it had to be beyond overwhelming. And he sees this, the Father seated on the throne. It's a beautiful picture. So anyway, he goes in and he sees the glory of God. One little side note, I'm going a little long here because there's so much in here. One little side note. Remember, John's human, and he's seeing something ultra beyond human. And the only language he has and the only way he can describe it is in human terms and human vocabulary. And I think that severely limits just how he can describe what he's seeing. So he's putting these things into this beautiful picture. But trust me when I say, when he stands before the Father and sees him, sees the glory of heaven. It had to be overwhelming. It had to be beyond description. That's what we should be looking for. That's what we're longing for. Now, the stones that are described here are emeralds and sapphires, or different stones, and they all have some significance. The two that John describes are both represent tribes of Israel, both Reuben and Benjamin. Reuben the oldest, Benjamin the youngest. Reuben's name literally means behold the son. He's the oldest. And the youngest son, being Benjamin, his name literally means son at my right hand. He's got a beautiful picture of God the Father, these beautiful stones that represent Christ, and the tribes of Israel, the Son of God, behold the Son, and the Son at my right hand, who is Christ himself. So I'm going to end with that, just to kind of give you a little context there. There is this amazing picture. And we're all going to get to go there. So church, get fired up. Let's take as many people with us as we can. We're going to see the King, and he sits on the throne. So God bless you. See you next time for part number 14, and hopefully I'll get a little farther into chapter 4. God bless. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.